Stoicism, an ancient philosophy founded in Greece, offers timeless wisdom that can help us navigate the complexities of modern life. While Stoicism has roots in the teachings of figures like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, its principles are remarkably relevant today. At its core, Stoicism teaches us how to live virtuously, focus on what we can control, and accept what is beyond our influence. These teachings provide us with powerful tools to manage stress, build emotional resilience, and find inner peace amidst the chaos of modern existence. In a world full of distractions, uncertainties, and constant change, Stoicism offers a refreshing perspective. It encourages us to embrace challenges, not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. The Stoic philosophy is not about suppressing emotions or avoiding discomfort, but about learning how to respond to life's inevitable ups and downs with wisdom, patience, and courage. By focusing on personal development and maintaining a sense of inner tranquility, Stoicism helps us build a foundation for a life that is less affected by external circumstances and more rooted in internal strength. In this article, we will explore how to apply Stoic principles to everyday situations, whether in our careers, relationships, personal growth, or daily routines. From managing disappointment and stress to practicing gratitude and emotional detachment, Stoicism provides a framework for living a balanced, meaningful life. By learning how to embrace the Stoic mindset, we can better handle the challenges that come our way, respond to difficulties with greater clarity, and ultimately find peace and fulfillment in a world that often feels out of control. Join us as we dive into the practical aspects of Stoicism and discover how it can transform our daily lives for the better. Number 1. Introduction to Stoicism. Stoicism is an ancient Greek philosophy that emerged in the early 3rd century BCE, founded by Zeno of Citium in Athens. It's a philosophy that aims to teach us how to live a virtuous life by focusing on what we can control, accepting what we cannot, and fostering resilience in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Stoicism became highly influential in both Greece and Rome, with philosophers like Marcus Aurelius helping to refine and popularize its core ideas. While it originated centuries ago, its teachings are remarkably relevant today, especially when dealing with life's disappointments, uncertainties, and emotional struggles. The central idea of Stoicism is that our happiness and peace of mind are not dependent on external circumstances, but rather on our internal mindset and attitude. Stoics argue that the world around us is constantly changing, and while we can't control these external events, we can control how we respond to them. This idea of controlling our internal reactions rather than trying to manipulate the external world lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy. By learning to accept what we cannot change and focusing our energy on what we can, Stoicism offers a powerful approach to navigating the complexities of life with a sense of calm, clarity, and purpose. A key concept within Stoic thought is the dichotomy of control, which emphasizes the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot. Stoics teach that we should focus all of our efforts on the things within our control, our thoughts, our behaviors, and our attitudes. Everything else, such as the actions of other people, the state of the economy, or the natural events of the world, is outside our control. By understanding and internalizing this dichotomy, we free ourselves from the anxiety and frustration that often arise when we try to control or change things that are beyond our reach. For instance, if someone criticizes us or if a project fails, we cannot control the external event, but we do have control over how we react to it. Stoicism teaches us to respond to such situations with equanimity, without anger, fear, or regret. Instead of allowing these external events to disturb our peace of mind, we can choose to view them through the lens of rationality and acceptance. This approach helps reduce the emotional turmoil that often accompanies disappointment, frustration, or failure. Another core Stoic principle is the idea of virtue as the highest good. The Stoics believed that living virtuously through wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance was the key to living a fulfilled and meaningful life. Virtue is considered the only true good, while everything else, such as wealth, health, and fame, is seen as indifferent. These external things are neither inherently good nor bad, and they can neither add to nor detract from our true happiness. Stoics argued that if we live in accordance with virtue, we will cultivate an inner peace that is not affected by external fluctuations. The Stoics saw life as a series of challenges, obstacles, and inevitable setbacks. Disappointments, they believed, are not to be feared but embraced as part of the human experience. According to Stoic teachings, we should never expect life to be without hardship or disappointment. Instead, we should prepare ourselves mentally for life's inevitable struggles, viewing them as opportunities for growth and self-improvement. When disappointment strikes, rather than reacting impulsively with anger or frustration, Stoics encourage us to take a step back and reflect on the situation. By understanding the root cause of our disappointment and reassessing our expectations, we can maintain a sense of calm and perspective. An important Stoic practice for managing disappointment is negative visualization. This involves imagining the worst-case scenario in advance, not as a form of pessimism, but as a way to mentally prepare for potential challenges. By contemplating the possibility of failure or loss, we can reduce the shock and emotional distress when those events actually occur. This practice helps cultivate resilience, making it easier to accept the ups and downs of life with grace and equanimity. In addition to negative visualization, Stoicism also teaches the importance of self-reflection. By regularly evaluating our actions, attitudes, and responses, we can better understand the sources of our emotional reactions and identify areas for improvement. Self-reflection helps us develop the wisdom to respond to disappointment in a constructive way, rather than being overwhelmed by negative emotions. One of the most powerful aspects of Stoicism is the focus on the development of inner strength. While external events are beyond our control, we have the power to control our mindset and emotional responses. Stoicism encourages us to build resilience by constantly honing our ability to remain calm and composed, even in the face of adversity. This mental fortitude is cultivated through the regular practice of Stoic exercises, such as journaling, meditation, and philosophical study. Perhaps one of the most famous Stoic teachings comes from Epictetus, who reminds us that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In Stoicism, we are not victims of our circumstances. We are active participants in shaping our emotional responses and our perceptions of the world. By embracing Stoic practices, we can cultivate the emotional resilience needed to face life's disappointments with strength, clarity, and a sense of inner peace. In summary, Stoicism offers a timeless philosophy for living a good life, one that is centered on virtue, reason, and the cultivation of inner peace. By focusing on what is within our control and accepting what is not, we can better navigate life's disappointments and challenges. Stoicism encourages us to develop emotional resilience, transforming setbacks into opportunities for growth. By practicing Stoic principles, we can achieve a deep sense of tranquility, no matter what life throws our way. Number 2, the role of expectations in disappointment. Expectations play a crucial role in the experience of disappointment, as they set the mental framework through which we interpret and react to events in our lives. At its core, an expectation is a belief or anticipation about how things should unfold, whether in our relationships, career, or personal endeavors. However, when these expectations aren't met, disappointment often follows. Stoicism offers profound insights into how our expectations can lead to emotional distress and how adjusting them can help reduce the impact of disappointment. The Stoic perspective on expectations is grounded in the understanding that much of our suffering arises from the gap between our expectations and reality. When we expect things to go a certain way and they don't, the emotional response can be intense. Feelings of frustration, anger, or sadness often surface. This reaction, according to Stoicism, is not caused by the external event itself, but by our attachment to a particular outcome. The Stoics argue that our emotional turmoil stems from our belief that we are entitled to a certain result, rather than accepting that life is full of uncertainties and variables outside our control. For example, we might expect a promotion at work, the success of a project, or a relationship to develop in a certain way. When these expectations aren't met, the disappointment can feel overwhelming. Stoics would advise us to examine these expectations carefully, questioning whether they are realistic and within our control. Are we basing our expectations on external factors, such as other people's actions or the outcome of events we can't influence? The Stoic view suggests that it's not the unmet expectation itself that causes disappointment, but the attachment to that expectation, which is often rooted in external circumstances. The Stoic approach to managing expectations involves adjusting them to align more closely with reality. Rather than hoping for a specific outcome, the Stoic practice is to focus on the process and on actions that are within our control. By cultivating an awareness that we cannot control everything, whether it's the actions of others, the outcomes of our efforts, or the twists and turns of life, we can begin to loosen our attachment to specific results. This doesn't mean abandoning goals or aspirations, but rather letting go of rigid expectations about how things must unfold. One practical Stoic exercise for dealing with expectations is the practice of negative visualization. This technique involves imagining the worst-case scenario before an event takes place, not to cultivate pessimism, but to prepare mentally for the possibility that things might not go as planned. By visualizing potential setbacks, we come to accept them as part of life's natural flow, which makes it easier to accept reality if things don't unfold as we hoped. Negative visualization can also help us adjust our expectations in advance, understanding that while we hope for success, we are also prepared to handle disappointment without excessive emotional distress. Another key Stoic practice is the idea of focusing on what we can control. This principle is central to minimizing disappointment, as it directs our energy toward actions and attitudes we can influence, rather than focusing on the end result. For instance, if you work hard toward a goal and it doesn't work out, a Stoic would focus on the effort and the virtue of persistence, rather than dwelling on the failure itself. The Stoic wisdom here is that, by shifting focus from the result to the process, we take ownership of what we can control and free ourselves from the emotional burden of unfulfilled expectations. Additionally, Stoicism encourages us to reframe our expectations and see every outcome, whether positive or negative, as an opportunity for growth. Instead of seeing disappointment as something to avoid, Stoicism teaches us to view setbacks as a natural part of life that helps us build resilience. In fact, some of the most valuable lessons in life come not from success, but from failure and disappointment. Stoics believe that adversity can teach us important lessons about our own character, our ability to adapt, and our capacity for enduring hardship with grace. For example, imagine you're preparing for a job interview and you expect to get the position. You may have mentally visualized yourself in the role, and when you don't get the job, disappointment naturally follows. However, if you have approached the situation with the Stoic mindset of focusing on the process, e.g., preparing well, presenting your best self, rather than the specific outcome, securing the job, the disappointment may be less severe. By reframing the situation, you can recognize the value in the experience itself, perhaps learning new skills, gaining interview experience, or identifying areas for personal growth, rather than just focusing on the outcome. This shift in perspective can be especially liberating in relationships where unmet expectations often lead to disappointment. Whether it's expecting a partner to act in a certain way or wanting a friendship to evolve in a particular direction, Stoicism teaches us to adjust our expectations based on reality. Instead of imposing rigid ideas about how others should behave, Stoics encourage acceptance of people as they are, recognizing that we cannot control others' actions. This doesn't mean giving up on relationships or goals, but rather letting go of the expectation that things must unfold in a particular way. In summary, the role of expectations in disappointment is significant, as our attachment to specific outcomes can amplify feelings of frustration and sadness when things don't go as planned. By adjusting our expectations and focusing on the things within our control, we can reduce the emotional impact of disappointment. Stoicism teaches us that disappointment isn't a sign of failure, but an opportunity to practice resilience, reframe our perspectives, and grow stronger. Through awareness, negative visualization, and focusing on the process rather than the result, we can navigate life's challenges with greater emotional clarity and composure, accepting that disappointment is simply part of the human experience. Number 3. Control what you can, accept what you can't. One of the most powerful teachings of Stoicism is the principle, control what you can, accept what you can't. This simple yet profound idea forms the backbone of Stoic philosophy and offers a transformative approach to navigating the unpredictability of life. In essence, it encourages us to focus our energy and attention on the things that are within our control, while letting go of the things that lie outside our influence. This mindset not only reduces unnecessary stress and frustration, but also cultivates emotional resilience and inner peace. The Stoics believed that life is filled with variables. Some are within our control and others are not. For instance, we cannot control the weather, the actions of other people, or the outcome of a global crisis. These external factors often lead to feelings of helplessness and disappointment, especially when things don't go as we expect. However, what we can control are our own thoughts, beliefs, responses, and actions. By focusing our energy on these elements, we can reclaim our sense of agency and autonomy, no matter the circumstances. This principle is deeply rooted in the Stoic understanding of what is in our power and what is not. Epictetus, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, famously taught that some things are up to us and some things are not. In his view, what lies within our control are our own judgments, desires, and reactions. Everything else, the actions of others, external events, and even our physical circumstances, are outside our control. According to Stoicism, trying to control these external forces is futile and only leads to frustration, anxiety, and emotional turmoil. A crucial part of practicing this Stoic principle is developing self-awareness, the ability to recognize what we can and cannot control in any given situation. For example, if we are facing a difficult situation at work, such as a tight deadline or a challenging project, the Stoic approach would be to focus on how we manage our time, our effort, and our approach to the task at hand. These are things we can control. However, if a colleague is uncooperative or an unforeseen issue arises, the Stoic mindset would encourage us to accept that we cannot control these external variables. Instead of becoming frustrated or upset, we would acknowledge them and move forward with the things we can control. One of the primary benefits of this approach is the ability to reduce unnecessary stress. So much of our suffering comes from trying to control things that are simply beyond our reach. We might get upset because we can't change someone's mind, because things aren't going according to plan, or because we don't get the recognition we think we deserve. However, these situations are often outside our control. By accepting this, we free ourselves from the emotional burden of trying to force outcomes that aren't ours to dictate. Instead of feeling powerless or defeated, Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is within our realm of influence and to act with wisdom, courage, and patience. This doesn't mean resigning ourselves to passivity or inaction. On the contrary, Stoicism encourages us to take deliberate and rational actions where we can make a difference. However, we do so with the understanding that the outcome of our actions may not always align with our expectations. What we can control is the quality of our effort and our attitude toward the process. A key practice in Stoicism for embracing the concept of control and acceptance is mindful detachment. This practice involves mentally separating yourself from the outcome and recognizing that, while we can influence situations through our actions, the final result often depends on factors beyond our control. When we adopt this mindset, we can fully invest ourselves in the process without becoming overly attached to the results. This detachment doesn't mean a lack of care. Rather, it's a way of accepting that, while we may give our best effort, there are forces beyond our control that shape the outcome. The acceptance part of the equation is equally important. In the face of challenges or setbacks, Stoics advocate for accepting what cannot be changed. This acceptance is not passive resignation, but an active choice to let go of resistance. When we resist what is beyond our control, we waste energy fighting against the inevitable. For example, if a flight is delayed, there is nothing we can do about it. Becoming angry or frustrated will only add to our stress. Instead, by accepting the situation, we release the emotional tension and are better able to use our time more effectively, whether that's by reading, reflecting, or finding a solution to make the best of the delay. Acceptance also involves a shift in mindset. Stoicism teaches that instead of seeing obstacles or disappointments as problems, we can view them as opportunities to practice our virtues. Life's challenges are often seen as a test of our patience, resilience, and self-discipline. By reframing our perspective, we can transform adversity into a tool for personal growth. If we fail to get a promotion, for example, we can accept the setback and reflect on what we can learn from the experience. Perhaps it's an opportunity to develop new skills or to reassess our career goals. Another Stoic practice that aligns with controlling what we can and accepting what we can't is negative visualization. This technique involves mentally preparing for setbacks and imagining how we would respond to them. By doing this, we reduce the shock and emotional pain when something goes wrong because we've already mentally accepted the possibility. It's not about expecting the worst, but about cultivating the emotional resilience to handle life's uncertainties. In summary, the Stoic principle of control what you can, accept what you can't is a powerful tool for maintaining inner peace and emotional resilience. By focusing our energy on the things we can control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, and letting go of the things beyond our control, we can reduce anxiety, frustration, and disappointment. This mindset not only helps us navigate life's challenges with greater composure, but it also empowers us to live a more intentional and fulfilled life. Stoicism teaches us that by embracing both control and acceptance, we can create a life that is more aligned with our values and less affected by the whims of fate. Number 4, the dichotomy of control. One of the most fundamental concepts in Stoic philosophy is the dichotomy of control, a principle that can dramatically reshape the way we experience life's challenges and disappointments. Introduced by the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, the dichotomy of control emphasizes the distinction between things that are within our control and things that are beyond our control. By understanding this dichotomy, we can better navigate the ups and downs of life with greater emotional clarity and resilience. At its core, the dichotomy of control is simple. There are things we can control: our thoughts, actions, judgments, and reactions. And there are things we cannot control: other people's actions, the natural world, or the outcomes of our efforts. This understanding is incredibly powerful because it allows us to shift our focus from external events to our internal responses. The key idea is that while we cannot control the world around us, we can control how we engage with it. One of the reasons this concept is so transformative is that it frees us from the mental and emotional burdens that arise when we try to control things outside our power. Often we feel stressed, frustrated, or angry when things don't go the way we expect them to. For example, if a colleague is late to a meeting or a flight is delayed, we might feel upset or powerless. However, these are events that are beyond our control. By accepting the limits of our control and focusing on our own responses, we can reduce the emotional turmoil that these external events often bring. The dichotomy of control encourages us to ask ourselves a simple question: is this thing within my control? If the answer is yes, then we can focus on taking deliberate and effective action. If the answer is no, then we must let go of the need to control it and instead accept it for what it is. This doesn't mean resignation or passivity. On the contrary, the Stoic practice is to take responsibility for the things that we can change and to act with wisdom and integrity. However, when faced with things outside our control, Stoicism teaches us to cultivate an attitude of acceptance and to focus our energy on maintaining inner peace. For instance, imagine you are preparing for a job interview. While you can control how well you prepare, how you present yourself, and how you manage your nerves, you cannot control whether or not you get the job. The employer may decide based on factors beyond your qualifications, such as their budget or company direction. By recognizing this, you can focus on doing your best during the interview without becoming consumed by the need to secure the job. The Stoic approach would be to accept that, while you can influence the process through your efforts, the final outcome is not entirely in your hands. Similarly, the dichotomy of control is incredibly useful in managing our relationships with others. We can control our own actions, words, and behavior, but we cannot control how other people think, feel, or behave. If someone behaves poorly or disappoints us, the Stoic mindset encourages us to focus on how we respond to their actions, rather than trying to change or control them. By understanding that other people's behaviors are not within our control, we can avoid unnecessary frustration and maintain a more peaceful state of mind. One of the key practices that help us apply the dichotomy of control is self-reflection. Regularly asking ourselves, "What can I control in this situation?" helps us focus on the present moment and the things that are within our realm of influence. This allows us to direct our energy where it is most effective and avoid wasting emotional energy on things that are beyond our reach. The dichotomy of control also ties closely with the idea of acceptance. Acceptance does not mean passive resignation, but rather a deep understanding that there are certain things in life that we simply cannot change. We cannot control other people's actions, the outcome of events, or the natural course of life. Acceptance involves recognizing these realities and releasing the emotional attachment to outcomes that are outside our control. By doing so, We reduce the inner conflict and mental strain that comes from resisting what is beyond our power. For example, if you're facing a health issue or a personal setback, the dichotomy of control can help you approach the situation with greater clarity. While you can control certain aspects of your health, such as adopting a healthy lifestyle or following medical advice, there are things outside your control, like the progression of an illness or an unexpected accident. By acknowledging this distinction, you can focus on what you can do to improve your situation while accepting the things that you cannot change. This shift in perspective allows you to approach challenges with greater emotional resilience and peace of mind. Another aspect of the dichotomy of control is the idea of emotional detachment. While we may not always be able to prevent ourselves from feeling upset or frustrated when things go wrong, we can train ourselves to detach emotionally from outcomes that are beyond our control. Instead of becoming consumed by anger, regret, or disappointment, we can choose to observe these emotions without judgment and let them pass. This emotional detachment is not about suppressing our feelings, but rather about recognizing that our emotions do not define us. We have the power to control how we respond to them, allowing us to remain centered in the face of external challenges. Number 5. The power of perspective. The power of perspective is one of the most transformative and accessible tools in Stoic philosophy. Our perspective shapes the way we perceive and react to the world around us, influencing our emotional responses, our decisions, and ultimately, our happiness. The Stoics understood that while we cannot control external events or circumstances, we have complete control over how we interpret and respond to them. By changing our perspective, we can change our experience of life, transforming challenges into opportunities and setbacks into lessons. At the heart of Stoic thought is the understanding that events themselves are neutral. It is our judgments and interpretations that assign them meaning. This means that two people can experience the same event but react in vastly different ways depending on how they perceive it. For example, if someone misses a flight, one person might see it as a frustrating inconvenience, while another might view it as an opportunity to relax or reflect. The Stoic perspective teaches that our emotional reactions to situations are not determined by the situation itself, but by the meaning we attach to it. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, repeatedly emphasized the idea that our thoughts and judgments are within our control. According to Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This concept encourages us to detach from the automatic emotional responses that often arise from external events, and instead choose how we will respond. When we view challenges through a Stoic lens, we can reframe our perspective and see them as opportunities for growth, learning, and resilience. One of the primary tools that the Stoics used to shift their perspective was cognitive reframing, the practice of consciously changing the way we interpret a situation. For instance, when faced with a difficult situation, a Stoic might ask themselves, "What can I learn from this?" Or, "How can I grow from this challenge?" By reframing adversity as a chance to practice virtues such as patience, perseverance, or humility, we can change our emotional response and reduce the distress we feel. This shift in perspective not only lessens the impact of negative emotions, but also fosters a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in life. Another important aspect of perspective is the practice of negative visualization, which involves mentally preparing for potential setbacks or challenges. While this might seem counterintuitive, negative visualization is a Stoic technique that allows us to appreciate what we have and to reduce the fear of loss. By imagining the worst-case scenario, losing a job, a loved one, or our health, we come to accept that these things are part of life's natural cycle. This perspective helps us develop gratitude for what we have and reduces the emotional shock when we face inevitable challenges. It also strengthens our resilience, as we are mentally prepared for difficult situations and can respond to them with greater clarity and composure. The Stoic practice of viewing things in the grander context is another way to shift our perspective. Often we get caught up in the small details of life, focusing on the immediate frustrations and setbacks that feel overwhelming in the moment. However, when we step back and look at our lives from a broader perspective, many of these issues become less significant. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often reminded himself to consider the transience of life and to put his daily struggles into the context of the larger universe. When we view our challenges within the scope of the entirety of human existence, they often appear much smaller and less daunting. This broader perspective can help us maintain a sense of peace, even in the face of adversity. One of the most powerful ways to shift perspective is through the practice of acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation, but rather a deep recognition that there are things in life beyond our control, and by accepting them, we free ourselves from the frustration and emotional turmoil that comes from resisting them. For example, if you're facing a health issue that is beyond your control, acceptance means acknowledging the reality of the situation and focusing on how you can respond with dignity and strength, rather than wasting energy wishing things were different. Acceptance allows us to embrace life as it is, without being attached to a specific outcome. Another key aspect of the power of perspective is gratitude. Stoics believed that cultivating gratitude is a powerful way to shift our perspective on life. When we focus on what we are grateful for, whether it's our health, relationships, or the simple pleasures of daily life, we naturally begin to view life more positively. Gratitude helps us to reframe challenges as opportunities to appreciate the good things we already have, rather than fixating on what's wrong or what's missing. Practicing gratitude regularly can foster a more optimistic and resilient outlook, even in the face of adversity. The power of perspective is also deeply connected to self-awareness and mindfulness. When we are aware of our thoughts and emotions, we can consciously choose how to interpret and respond to situations. For example, if we feel anger rising in response to an unjust situation, mindfulness allows us to step back and recognize that our anger is a reaction, not a necessity. We can then choose a different response, one that is more measured and aligned with our values. This awareness gives us the freedom to shift our perspective from one of victimhood or helplessness to one of empowerment and control. In a practical sense, applying the power of perspective involves regularly checking in with ourselves and asking, how am I interpreting this situation? And, is this the most constructive perspective I can adopt? Often we are so caught up in our emotional responses that we don't take the time to question our thoughts. However, by pausing and reflecting, we can shift from a negative, limiting perspective to a more positive and empowering one. The key takeaway from the power of perspective is that we always have the ability to choose how we view the world. By reframing our thoughts, practicing gratitude, embracing acceptance, and taking a broader view of life's challenges, we can transform our experiences. Instead of being victims of our circumstances, we become active participants in shaping our emotional and psychological well-being. The Stoics believed that the way we interpret and respond to the world determines our happiness and fulfillment, and by exercising control over our perspective, we can cultivate a life of greater peace, resilience, and purpose. Number 6. Emotional detachment, Stoic perspective. One of the most powerful tools in Stoic philosophy is the practice of emotional detachment, which allows us to navigate life's challenges without becoming overwhelmed by our emotions. Emotional detachment does not mean suppressing or denying our feelings. Rather, It is about developing the ability to respond to situations with a sense of objectivity and calm, rather than reacting impulsively based on our emotions. This Stoic practice enables us to maintain emotional balance in the face of adversity, disappointment, or external pressures. In Stoicism, emotions are often seen as irrational reactions to external events or situations. The Stoics believed that our emotions arise from judgments we make about the world, not from the events themselves. For example, if we lose a job, we might feel anger, sadness, or fear. However, the Stoic perspective suggests that it's not the loss of the job itself that causes these emotions, but rather our judgments about the job loss, perhaps thinking that our worth is tied to our employment or that the loss is unfair. By changing our judgment about the situation, we can change the emotional response that follows. The Stoic practice of emotional detachment is closely related to the idea of detaching from outcomes. Stoics believe that while we can control our actions and responses, we cannot control the results of those actions. Life is full of uncertainties and things beyond our control, and it's natural to become attached to certain outcomes. However, attachment to outcomes can lead to emotional turmoil, as we feel disappointment, frustration, or despair when things don't go as planned. Emotional detachment helps us let go of this attachment, allowing us to focus on the process rather than the result. By doing so, we reduce the emotional fluctuations that often come with the highs and lows of success and failure. Emotional detachment also involves distancing ourselves from external validation. In a world that often places value on recognition, success, and approval from others, Stoicism teaches us to look inward for validation, rather than relying on the praise or judgment of others. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius emphasized that external circumstances and people's opinions are beyond our control, and if we tie our emotional well-being to these external factors, we are at the mercy of others. Instead, we should focus on living in accordance with our values and principles, knowing that this is where true fulfillment lies. By detaching from the need for external validation, we become more self-sufficient and emotionally stable. One of the key benefits of emotional detachment is its ability to reduce suffering. The Stoics believed that much of our emotional suffering comes from clinging to things that are temporary and beyond our control: wealth, status, success, and even relationships. When these things are threatened or lost, we experience emotional pain. Emotional detachment, however, teaches us to recognize that nothing in life is permanent, and by accepting the impermanence of all things, we can reduce the emotional pain associated with loss. This does not mean we stop caring about people or things. Rather, it means that we accept the natural flow of life, understanding that loss is inevitable and that we can maintain inner peace regardless of external circumstances. A critical aspect of emotional detachment is the practice of mindful awareness. By being mindful of our emotions, we can step back from them and observe them without judgment or attachment. This practice allows us to create a space between the situation and our emotional response, giving us the opportunity to choose a more rational and measured reaction. For instance, if we feel anger rising due to an unjust situation, mindfulness allows us to recognize the anger without immediately reacting. Instead of letting anger control our actions, we can pause, reflect, and decide how we want to respond. By practicing mindfulness and awareness, we cultivate emotional resilience and can remain centered even in the face of difficult situations. Stoics also practiced negative visualization to prepare themselves emotionally for the challenges and losses they knew were inevitable. Negative visualization involves imagining the worst-case scenario, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a personal failure, or a health issue, and mentally preparing for it. This practice may seem grim, but its purpose is to help us build emotional resilience by accepting that life is uncertain and that pain, loss, and disappointment are natural parts of the human experience. By contemplating these possibilities in advance, we reduce the emotional shock when they eventually happen and can face them with greater composure and grace. Another Stoic tool for emotional detachment is the concept of perspective taking. When we are emotionally involved in a situation, it's easy to become overwhelmed by our personal feelings and attachments. However, by stepping back and considering the bigger picture or adopting a different perspective, we can detach from our emotions and see the situation more objectively. For example, if we are upset by a personal setback, we can remind ourselves that everyone faces challenges and that our suffering is part of the shared human experience. This broader perspective helps us detach from our individual emotions and approach the situation with more clarity and emotional control. It's also important to note that emotional detachment in Stoicism does not mean becoming indifferent or callous. Stoicism encourages us to act with compassion and empathy, but without becoming emotionally entangled in the pain or suffering of others. It teaches us to respond to others' emotions with understanding and support, but not to absorb their emotions as our own. This is an important distinction. Emotional detachment in Stoicism is about maintaining our emotional equilibrium, not about disengaging from life or others. It's about caring deeply, but without allowing ourselves to be swept away by the emotions that arise in response to events or people. The practice of emotional detachment can also enhance our decision-making. When we are not emotionally attached to a particular outcome, we can make decisions based on logic, reason, and what is truly best for us, rather than being swayed by fear, desire, or impulsive reactions. This clear-headed decision-making allows us to act with greater wisdom and integrity, which leads to a more fulfilling and peaceful life. Number 7. Viewing disappointment as a learning opportunity. One of the most empowering Stoic practices is the ability to view disappointment not as a source of frustration or defeat, but as a valuable learning opportunity. Disappointment, in this sense, becomes a tool for personal growth, offering us the chance to reflect, improve, and move forward with greater wisdom and understanding. In a world that often treats disappointment as something to be avoided or feared, the Stoic perspective invites us to embrace it, recognize its potential, and use it as a stepping stone toward greater resilience and success. At its core, Stoicism teaches that all external events, including disappointments, are beyond our control. What we do control is our response to them, how we interpret them, and what we choose to learn from them. Rather than succumbing to negative emotions like anger, regret, or self-pity, the Stoic mindset encourages us to ask a key question when faced with disappointment. What can I learn from this experience? This question shifts our focus from the pain of the situation to the potential for personal growth that lies within it. Viewing disappointment as a learning opportunity involves reframing the way we interpret setbacks. Instead of seeing a failed project, a missed opportunity, or a personal mistake as a sign of failure, we can view it as a lesson in disguise. Every setback has the potential to teach us something valuable, whether it's about our own limitations, our choices, or the world around us. For example, if a business venture doesn't succeed, rather than focusing on the loss of money or the disappointment of failure, we can reflect on the process. What went wrong? What could we have done differently? What skills or knowledge did we gain from the experience? By reframing the disappointment in this way, we transform it from something negative into a valuable lesson for future success. In the Stoic view, adversity and disappointment are not obstacles, but opportunities for self-improvement. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often wrote in his meditations about how the challenges he faced, including political turmoil, personal losses, and even the physical pain of illness, were opportunities for him to practice Stoic virtues such as patience, humility, and perseverance. Instead of allowing disappointments to weaken him, he used them as a means to develop strength of character. For Marcus, the true test of a Stoic was not how he performed in times of comfort, but how he responded to adversity and disappointment. This practice of viewing disappointment as a learning opportunity helps us develop a growth mindset, an attitude that sees challenges as opportunities to expand our abilities and understanding. A person with a growth mindset does not see setbacks as permanent or insurmountable. Instead, they recognize that failure is a natural part of the learning process. Whether it's learning a new skill, pursuing a career goal, or navigating personal relationships, failure and disappointment are not signs that we are not good enough. Rather, they are signs that we are in the process of growth. This mindset helps us approach life with greater resilience, understanding that every setback is temporary and that we can learn from each experience to build a better future. Self-reflection is a key component of this Stoic approach to disappointment. After experiencing a setback, taking the time to reflect on what happened and why can provide profound insights. In Stoicism, this practice of self-reflection is known as examining our impressions, the thoughts and judgments that arise in our minds about a particular event. By consciously examining our thoughts, we can uncover any biases, assumptions, or unrealistic expectations that may have contributed to the disappointment. For instance, if a personal relationship falters, instead of blaming the other person or feeling victimized, we might reflect on our own role in the situation. Did we set unrealistic expectations? Were we too focused on controlling the outcome? By gaining clarity through reflection, we can learn from our mistakes and avoid repeating them in the future. Another key aspect of viewing disappointment as a learning opportunity is embracing imperfection. Stoicism teaches us that perfection is an unattainable ideal, and that striving for perfection in everything we do is both unrealistic and counterproductive. Instead, the Stoics encourage us to focus on progress, not perfection. Disappointments are often the result of our own imperfections, whether it's a flaw in our preparation, a misjudgment, or a failure to control external factors. Accepting imperfection allows us to approach disappointment with greater acceptance and humility. Rather than being discouraged by imperfections, we can use them as a signpost that points us toward areas of growth. Each disappointment is an invitation to refine our skills, adjust our approach, and continue improving. The practice of equanimity, maintaining calm and composure in the face of setbacks, is another important Stoic principle that helps us view disappointment as a learning opportunity. Stoics believe that we should remain unaffected by external events and preserve our inner tranquility, regardless of how challenging or disappointing they may be. When we respond to disappointment with equanimity, we prevent our emotions from spiraling out of control, allowing us to assess the situation objectively. This calmness enables us to see the bigger picture and to identify the lessons that may be hidden within the disappointment. For example, if we fail to meet a personal goal, instead of reacting with anger or frustration, we can calmly evaluate what we learned from the experience and how we can adjust our efforts moving forward. A critical part of the Stoic approach to disappointment is acceptance, recognizing that life is filled with uncertainties and that not everything will go as planned. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus emphasized that we should focus on the things we can control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, and accept that there will always be external factors beyond our influence. Disappointments often arise when things don't go as we expect, and our frustration stems from trying to control the uncontrollable. By accepting the reality of disappointment and embracing it as part of life's natural ebb and flow, we can reduce the emotional impact of setbacks and remain focused on the lessons they offer. Finally, perseverance is a key element in turning disappointment into a learning opportunity. Stoicism teaches us that life will present us with many challenges, but the true test lies in how we respond to them. Disappointment may lead us to question our abilities or second-guess our decisions, but perseverance, the ability to keep moving forward despite setbacks, is the Stoic response. By learning from each disappointment and using it as a stepping stone, we develop the resilience to keep pursuing our goals with greater wisdom and determination. The more we persevere, the more we grow, and the more equipped we become to handle future disappointments with equanimity. Number 8. Self-reflection and improvement. Self-reflection is one of the foundational practices in Stoicism, serving as a powerful tool for personal development and emotional resilience. It is through self-reflection that we gain the ability to examine our thoughts, actions, and behaviors, allowing us to understand our motivations and identify areas for growth. Stoics emphasize the importance of daily self-reflection as a means of becoming more aligned with our values, improving our character, and ultimately leading a more fulfilled life. By regularly assessing our thoughts and actions, we can continuously improve ourselves, becoming wiser and more virtuous individuals. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the belief that we are responsible for our thoughts and actions, even if we cannot control external events. While the world around us is unpredictable and often out of our hands, the Stoics assert that our reactions, judgments, and behavior are entirely within our control. This responsibility for our own inner state forms the foundation of self-reflection. When we reflect on our behavior, we do so not with judgment or self-criticism, but with a mindset of curiosity and a desire for improvement. Self-reflection in Stoicism is not simply about looking back at what has happened, but about actively engaging in the process of self-examination. This practice involves evaluating our actions and decisions in light of Stoic virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. By asking ourselves questions like, did my actions align with my values today? Or was I just and fair in my dealings with others? We open the door to personal growth. Self-reflection invites us to examine the reasons behind our actions, why we acted in a certain way, what influenced our decisions, and whether our choices reflected our deeper principles. One of the primary purposes of self-reflection in Stoicism is to identify areas where we can improve. The Stoics believed that no matter how much progress we've made in our personal growth, there is always room for improvement. This mindset of continual self-improvement encourages us to adopt an attitude of lifelong learning and development. Every day presents new opportunities to practice the virtues we strive for, and every mistake or failure is a chance to learn and become better. Through daily self-reflection, we assess our strengths and weaknesses, acknowledging where we've succeeded and where we can grow. Journaling is one of the key tools used by Stoic philosophers to aid in self-reflection. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, kept a personal journal where he reflected on his thoughts, actions, and inner experiences. In his journal, he would often remind himself of the Stoic principles he aimed to live by and reflect on the ways in which he had fallen short or succeeded. For example, he would ask himself questions like, what did I do today that was in accordance with virtue? Or, what could I have done better? This process of journaling allowed Marcus to continuously refine his thoughts and actions, ultimately helping him to cultivate greater wisdom and resilience. Journaling provides a space to examine the day's events with clarity, offering an opportunity to learn from our experiences and make adjustments moving forward. Self-reflection also involves embracing our flaws and recognizing that growth requires an honest assessment of who we are, both in our strengths and weaknesses. Stoicism teaches that we should not shy away from self-criticism, but rather we should use it constructively. A key aspect of this is the Stoic understanding that our emotions and impulses are often the result of irrational judgments or beliefs. When we reflect on our emotional responses, we can identify the underlying beliefs that triggered them. For example, if we feel anger in response to an injustice, we might examine whether our expectations were unrealistic or if our attachment to a particular outcome led to frustration. Self-reflection gives us the chance to catch ourselves before we act on these irrational impulses and make more reasoned, measured choices. In addition to examining our actions, Stoic self-reflection also includes an assessment of our thoughts. Our thoughts shape our perceptions of the world and influence how we respond to situations. Stoics encourage us to be vigilant about the thoughts we entertain, questioning whether they are constructive or based on irrational beliefs. For instance, when we feel anxious about a future event, a Stoic would advise us to question whether this anxiety is based on reality or whether it stems from fear of the unknown. By reflecting on our thoughts, we can replace unhelpful patterns with more rational, grounded thinking that serves us better in the long run. The Stoics understood that our internal world, our beliefs and perceptions were just as important as our external actions. In fact, they believed that by transforming our internal world, we could transform the way we experience and engage with the external world. One powerful aspect of Stoic self-reflection is the practice of reframing our challenges. When faced with difficulties or disappointments, Stoicism teaches us to look for the lessons embedded within them. Instead of seeing challenges as obstacles to our happiness, we are encouraged to view them as opportunities for growth. Self-reflection allows us to revisit moments of difficulty and ask ourselves, what can I learn from this experience? Or, how can this setback help me become a better version of myself? This reframing helps to break the cycle of frustration and negativity, allowing us to find meaning and value even in the most challenging situations. Each obstacle becomes an opportunity to practice patience, resilience, and other virtues that enhance our character. The Stoics also stress the importance of consistency in self-reflection. It is not enough to reflect on our actions and thoughts once in a while. We must make it a consistent part of our daily routine. By doing so, we gradually build a habit of mindfulness and awareness that helps us stay aligned with our values and principles. Stoic self-reflection is a daily practice, a commitment to becoming the best version of ourselves, no matter how small the improvement might seem. Consistency in self-reflection allows us to track our progress over time and measure how far we have come on our journey of self-improvement. Incorporating gratitude into self-reflection is another key Stoic practice. While Stoicism often focuses on the challenges and hardships of life, it also encourages us to reflect on what we are grateful for. By practicing gratitude, we shift our focus from what we lack or what has gone wrong to what is good and positive in our lives. Gratitude fosters a sense of contentment and humility, helping us stay grounded and appreciative of what we have. This practice can deepen our sense of perspective, reminding us that even in the face of adversity, there is always something to be thankful for. Ultimately, Stoic self-reflection is a process of becoming self-aware and conscious of our thoughts, behaviors, and attitudes. It is about building the mental discipline to assess ourselves honestly and constructively, allowing us to identify areas for growth. This ongoing process of self-examination enables us to become better decision-makers, more virtuous individuals, and more resilient in the face of life's challenges. By regularly engaging in self-reflection, we can improve our character, align more closely with our values, and develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Number 9. Epictetus on disappointment. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, had a profound understanding of how to navigate the emotional turbulence that comes with disappointment. For Epictetus, disappointment was not just an emotional reaction, but a key opportunity for personal growth, clarity, and resilience. He believed that much of the pain we feel from disappointment stems not from the event itself, but from the judgments and expectations we place on those events. According to Epictetus, it is not the world's failures that disappoint us, but our own inability to accept the world as it is. At the heart of Epictetus's philosophy is the concept of the dichotomy of control, the idea that there are things in life we can control and things we cannot. Epictetus teaches that disappointment often arises from trying to control the uncontrollable. We may set our hearts on certain outcomes, whether in relationships, careers, or personal ambitions, and when things don't go as planned, we feel hurt, frustrated, or let down. However, Epictetus argues that it is our attachment to these outcomes that causes our suffering. He famously states, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This perspective encourages us to detach our sense of well-being from the outcomes of external events and focus instead on how we respond. For Epictetus, external events themselves are neutral, neither good nor bad, but it is our judgments about those events that shape our emotional responses. For example, if we are passed over for a promotion at work, the event itself is neither inherently good nor bad. It is our reaction to the event, our expectations of what we deserve and how we think the world should treat us, that leads to disappointment. Epictetus teaches that it is the expectations we hold about how things should be that set us up for disappointment. The more attached we are to specific outcomes, the greater our potential for suffering when those outcomes don't materialize. Epictetus encourages us to practice mental discipline to free ourselves from the hold that unrealistic expectations have on our emotional state. One way he suggests doing this is through the practice of negative visualization, imagining the worst possible outcome, not to depress ourselves, but to prepare mentally for the potential disappointments that life may bring. By visualizing loss or failure, we reduce the shock and emotional turmoil when things don't go our way. This practice, Epictetus believes, makes us more resilient as we learn to embrace the uncertainty of life and accept that disappointment is a natural part of the human experience. In his teachings, Epictetus emphasizes that it is our desires and attachments that cause us to suffer, and by learning to adjust these desires, we can reduce the potential for disappointment. He advises that we cultivate a mindset that is less focused on acquiring material wealth, status, or external approval, and more focused on the internal development of virtues such as wisdom, courage, and temperance. When we align our desires with what is within our control, our thoughts, actions, and virtues, we shift our perspective. Disappointment loses much of its power because our happiness is no longer dependent on the outcome of external events, but on our inner strength and moral character. Another key lesson from Epictetus on disappointment is his teaching about the impermanence of life. He reminds us that everything in the world, including our personal achievements and relationships, is temporary. The Stoic philosopher states, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. Epictetus teaches that by accepting the inevitability of life's ups and downs, including disappointment, we build emotional fortitude. Instead of seeing disappointment as a tragedy, we can view it as an opportunity to practice virtue, patience, and resilience. Epictetus also advises us to reflect on our actions and take responsibility for our own responses to situations. When we are disappointed, instead of blaming external circumstances or other people, we should focus on our own reactions and behavior. Epictetus asks us to examine whether our expectations were reasonable in the first place and whether we placed undue importance on things outside our control. This self-examination allows us to learn from our disappointments and avoid making the same mistakes in the future. For instance, if we are disappointed in a relationship, rather than focusing on the other person's behavior, we should reflect on whether we have placed unrealistic expectations on them or if we have neglected our own virtues, such as patience or compassion. Epictetus's wisdom regarding disappointment also involves cultivating a sense of gratitude. By practicing gratitude, we shift our focus away from what we lack to what we have. Even in the face of disappointment, we can find things to be thankful for, whether it's the opportunity to learn from the experience or the strength we gain by enduring hardship. Gratitude allows us to maintain a sense of peace and contentment, even when things don't go according to plan. It helps us to see the bigger picture and remember that our lives are made up of both successes and failures, and both contribute to our growth. In addition to these practices, Epictetus teaches that we should not be overly concerned with the opinions of others when we experience disappointment. Often, disappointment arises when we feel that others have not recognized our worth or when we are concerned about how others perceive us. Epictetus reminds us that external validation is unreliable and fleeting. Instead, we should focus on living in accordance with our values and principles and trust that our true worth is determined by our integrity and character, not by external circumstances or the opinions of others. Epictetus also emphasizes the importance of acceptance in dealing with disappointment. Acceptance does not mean resignation or passivity. Rather, it means accepting the reality of the situation as it is, without resistance or denial. It is a recognition that we cannot change certain things, and therefore we must focus on how we can respond in a way that aligns with our values and virtues. Acceptance allows us to move forward with clarity rather than being bogged down by frustration or regret. It frees us to act with wisdom and to make the best of any situation, rather than dwelling on what we cannot control. Lastly, Epictetus reminds us that disappointment is part of the human condition and that we should not expect life to be free of challenges. Life is a series of cycles, joys and sorrows, successes and failures, and it is how we handle the inevitable disappointments that define our character. He teaches us that we should not seek to avoid disappointment at all costs, but rather learn to handle it with grace and wisdom. Through this process, we grow stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to face the challenges life throws our way. Number 10. Applying Stoicism to everyday life. Stoicism, though a philosophy rooted in ancient Greece and Rome, offers timeless wisdom that can be incredibly practical in modern-day life. Its core teachings, embracing virtue, focusing on what we can control, and accepting the impermanence of life, are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Applying Stoicism to everyday life involves a shift in mindset, one that encourages us to navigate daily challenges with grace, emotional resilience, and a deep sense of inner peace. Stoicism doesn't ask us to retreat from the world or live a life of extreme austerity. Rather, it teaches us to engage with life fully, but with a mindful detachment from outcomes that are beyond our control. Let's explore how Stoic principles can be applied to various aspects of daily life, from our work and relationships to our personal growth and well-being. One of the central ideas in Stoicism is the dichotomy of control, the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. In everyday life, this principle can be transformative. How many times do we spend hours or even days stressing over things that are completely outside our control? Whether it's the actions of others, the weather, or the state of the economy, Stoicism teaches us that we should not allow these external events to disturb our peace of mind. Instead, we should focus our energy on the things we can control, our actions, thoughts, and attitudes. For example, if you're dealing with a difficult colleague at work, it's easy to become frustrated by their behavior. However, Stoicism teaches that you cannot control their actions. What you can control is how you respond to them, whether you react with patience, understanding, or, if necessary, detachment. This shift in focus from external circumstances to internal response fosters emotional resilience and reduces stress. In addition to this, negative visualization, a key Stoic practice, can help us prepare for life's inevitable challenges and setbacks. This practice involves imagining the worst-case scenario, not to dwell on negativity, but to mentally prepare ourselves for possible disappointments. By mentally rehearsing how we would respond to loss, failure, or other undesirable outcomes, we reduce the emotional impact of these events when they occur. In a practical sense, negative visualization could involve reflecting on what would happen if you lost your job, had an argument with a loved one, or faced a personal setback. While these things may not come to pass, being mentally prepared for such events helps us approach them with equanimity and calmness, reducing the likelihood of feeling overwhelmed when difficulties arise. Applying Stoicism to relationships is another powerful way to bring its wisdom into everyday life. In personal and professional relationships, we often experience disappointment when people don't meet our expectations. Whether it's a friend not being as supportive as we hoped, or a partner not fulfilling our emotional needs, these situations can create tension and frustration. Stoicism teaches us that much of the disappointment we experience in relationships comes from unrealistic expectations. Rather than expecting others to behave in ways that serve our desires or needs, Stoicism encourages us to accept others as they are, flaws and all, and focus on being virtuous in our own behavior. For instance, if a friend cancels plans at the last minute, instead of getting upset, we can use the opportunity to practice patience, understanding, or even gratitude for the time we now have for ourselves. By shifting our focus from how others should behave to how we can respond with virtue, we reduce disappointment and improve the quality of our relationships. In our professional lives, Stoicism can help us manage stress and expectations. In modern work environments, where performance is often measured by external markers like promotions, salary increases, and recognition, Stoicism encourages us to focus on the process rather than the outcome. Stoics believe that our actions should be guided by a commitment to virtue and excellence, not by the desire for external validation. When we apply this to work, it means doing our best not because we want a reward or recognition, but because it aligns with our values of integrity, responsibility, and diligence. This mindset helps us cope with workplace disappointment, whether it's not getting the promotion we wanted or dealing with a challenging project. Stoicism teaches us to remain focused on the quality of our actions rather than the external outcomes, which in turn allows us to maintain peace of mind regardless of external success or failure. Another practical Stoic practice is the cultivation of gratitude. While Stoicism is often associated with the control of emotions, it also stresses the importance of embracing what we already have rather than constantly striving for more. In today's consumer-driven society, it's easy to fall into the trap of feeling that we are lacking or that we need more to be happy. However, Stoicism teaches that true contentment comes from within. By practicing gratitude daily, we train our minds to focus on the abundance that already exists in our lives. For example, taking a moment each day to reflect on what you are grateful for, whether it's good health, supportive friends, or even the simple comforts of daily life, can transform your perspective. It helps us shift away from a mindset of scarcity and towards one of abundance, leading to greater fulfillment and emotional well-being. In the face of adversity, Stoicism teaches the practice of endurance and resilience. Life will inevitably present us with hardships, whether it's illness, financial difficulties, or the loss of a loved one. Stoicism does not advocate for denying or suppressing grief or sadness, but rather encourages us to face adversity with strength, dignity, and wisdom. By accepting that suffering is a natural part of the human experience, we can approach difficulties with a sense of perspective and inner fortitude. For example, if you are going through a challenging period in your life, Stoicism encourages you to reflect on what you can learn from the experience. How can you grow stronger, wiser, or more compassionate through this hardship? Instead of succumbing to despair or bitterness, Stoicism teaches that we can rise above suffering by choosing how we respond to it. This mindset helps us to maintain emotional stability even in the face of life's greatest challenges. Self-discipline and moderation are also key components of applying Stoicism to everyday life. In our consumer culture, where excess and indulgence are often celebrated, Stoicism encourages us to practice moderation and to resist the pull of unnecessary desires. This doesn't mean living a life of deprivation, but rather focusing on what is truly important and meaningful. Whether it's in our eating habits, spending, or use of technology, practicing self-discipline helps us to avoid being enslaved by our impulses and instead act in alignment with our long-term well-being. For instance, when tempted to overeat, we might reflect on the Stoic principle of temperance, which encourages us to enjoy things in moderation, appreciating them without allowing them to control us. Lastly, Stoicism teaches the importance of living in accordance with nature, which can be understood as aligning our actions with our core values and the greater good. In practical terms, this means making choices that contribute to our well-being and that of others. Whether it's taking care of our health, being kind to others, or contributing to society in a meaningful way, living in accordance with nature helps us find a sense of purpose and fulfillment. It reminds us that our actions should be aligned with the larger, universal order, rather than driven by selfish desires or fleeting pleasures.